We are on the air. So we're finishing, yesterday we talked about the first part of Damodar Lila, where Krishna was stealing the butter and making a mess and getting chased by Mother Yashoda, getting caught by Mother Yashoda, and getting tied up by Mother Yashoda. So now we're going to continue from there. So the last two verses of chapter 9 of the 10th canto, Shukadeva Goswami says, while Mother Yashoda was very busy with household affairs, the Supreme Lord Krishna observed the twin trees known as Yamala Arjuna, which in a former millennium had been the demigod sons of Kuvara. In their former birth, these two sons, known as Nala Kuvara and Manigriva, were extremely opulent and fortunate. But because of pride and false prestige, they did not care about anyone, and thus Narada Muni cursed them to become trees. So that's how chapter 9 ends. And then you can just imagine Maharaj Parikshit being a very inquisitive devotee. The 10th chapter starts off with Maharaj Parikshit asking Shukadeva Goswami, "Oh, great and powerful saint, what was the cause of Nala Kuvara and Manigriva's having been cursed by Narada Muni? What did they do that was so abominable that even Narada, the great sage, became angry at them? They described this to me." So that's how the Bhagavatam flows. It's like something happens, and then that sparks a question from Maharaj Parikshit, and then Shukadeva Goswami tells the next story, the backstory. So here we're getting the backstory of these two demigods, Nala Kuvara and Manigriva. So it turns out that these two boys were sons of Kuvara, who's the demigod in charge of the wealth. And so being his sons, then they have all kinds of material opulences. And also they were worshiping Lord Shiva with the mood of getting even more opulences. So they pleased Lord Shiva, who is pretty easy to please. And so Lord Shiva allowed them to use his garden. Lord Shiva lives on Mount Kailash in the Himalayas, and the place around Mount Kailash is full of beautiful gardens. And so there's this nice garden that they were wandering and just kind of frolicking in on the bank of the Ganges there. And then they drank some liquor, and they went with some women into the Ganges. After wandering through the flower gardens, they decided to go for a little swim. So they were there in the Ganges, which was full of lotus flowers and was just totally pristine, beautiful, clear, natural. And they were just basically messing around there, the two of them, in the water with those women. And they were everybody naked, and just kind of a sort of a hedonistic scene going on there. So sometimes this is the situation with the demigods, is because the standard of living, that the facilities for enjoyment are so easily accessible that they just get involved in a lot of sense gratification. And specifically, it's mentioned that although they had been drinking liquor, but the main source of their intoxication was not the liquor, it was their pride due to being very materially wealthy. So then it just so happens that Narada Muni passed through. Of course, this wasn't a coincidence. This was divine arrangement, because Krishna sees that these two boys, they're sons of a demigod. They're born, they have a pious birth. They're supposed to be exalted personalities. They shouldn't be acting like this. This is like the mode of ignorance mixed with the mode of passion. And demigods are supposed to be, more in the mode of goodness. So Krishna wanted to correct them, and he did it through his devotee. So he inspired, from within the heart of Narada, Krishna inspired Narada to go there. And Narada, naturally, he's a very compassionate soul. So time and time again, Narada sees people engaged in materialistic activities, or even very harmful, violent activities, and he takes it upon himself to try to deliver them. So Narada Muni, that's what he did. He saw these two boys intoxicated due to pride and due to wealth, and he made his diagnosis, just like a doctor. He said, these two people are diseased, so let me cure them. And then his cure was that he cursed them because he thought somehow or other these guys need a wake-up call. And yeah, so as soon as Narada Muni came through, the girls, the young women who were with them, they immediately became shy and covered their bodies, and they're thinking, it's a great sage, we can't be naked. But Nalakuvara and Manigriva did not have such dignity. They were so intoxicated by their opulence and their false prestige that they just thought, why should we bother? We're having a good time here. This is our life. We have permission to be in this garden, and we're demigods. We can do whatever we want. The saint doesn't want to see us like this. He can just look the other way. So like that, they were just super proud and irreverent. And, Narada Muni is thinking that, I wonder if they even know that they're naked. They're just so absorbed in their own enjoyment. So then it says here that Narada Muni, in order to show them special mercy, decided to give them a curse. Thus he spoke as follows. So then I'll read here what Narada Muni says. I'm not going to read everything he says because he gives them a really long lecture and we don't have a lot of time today. But he says, among all the attractions of material enjoyment, the attraction of riches bewilders one's intelligence more than having beautiful bodily features, taking birth in an aristocratic family, and being learned. When one is uneducated, but falsely puffed up by wealth, the result is that one engages his wealth in enjoying wine, women, and gambling. Unable to control their senses, rascals who are falsely proud of their riches or their birth in aristocratic families are so cruel that to maintain their perishable bodies, which they think will never grow old or die, they kill poor animals without mercy. Sometimes they kill animals merely to enjoy an excursion. So there's many verses here about the folly of wealth, or people who are uncultured, uneducated in spiritual values, and they become wealthy. So they end up just basically degrading themselves with their own wealth. So there's a difference between, and after this, then Narada Muni is going to sing the glories of poverty. He gives many reasons why poverty is actually very helpful for the conditioned soul. But we're talking about people who are not trained in Krishna consciousness. So when wealth is in the hands of an untrained person, then they're going to misuse it. They're going to basically obstruct their own spiritual progress by their wealth. Whereas a person who's untrained but is poor, then there's not much that they can do. They're basically, whatever money they have is going on their basic needs for survival, just paying their bills and getting food on the table and clothes, and they don't have a lot of money to spend on these extra indulgent things. But one who knows how to use wealth in the service of Krishna can have all the wealth. Srila Prabhupada wanted all the wealth of the world to use for the spiritual benefit of everybody. So that's an important point, that devotees can have plenty of wealth as long as we use it in Krishna's service. And to the extent that we do use it in Krishna's service, then Krishna will go on giving devotees more and more wealth. But as soon as we try to use it for ourselves, for our just kind of selfish sense enjoyment, then Krishna will kind of close the tap, shut off the faucet, because he doesn't want to give devotees facilities for just degrading material pleasures. So that's something to keep in mind. And another interesting point here is that nobody asked Nalakuvara and Manigriva didn't ask Narada Muni to go there. So this is the nature of the saintly person, that they just go. They take it upon themselves to approach people who need to be delivered. And we can look at also at the example of Srila Prabhupada, that nobody asked Prabhupada to come to America. It wasn't that people in America were like, oh, we're suffering, we really need to know who God is, we really want to know more about the spiritual world and how to get there, we need to import somebody from India. No, nobody was writing a letter to the Gaudiya Math saying, please send a representative over here so that we can learn bhakti. Prabhupada just went because, of course, that was the order of Bhaktisiddhanta, but Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur knew that people were suffering for want of Krishna consciousness, and Prabhupada took up the service. So that was our good fortune. And Nalakuvara and Manigriva also, they have achieved great fortune by getting the association of Narada Muni. So I'm going to skip over some of these things about wealth and poverty. You can read on your own if you get some time. Let's see. So now Narada Muni is concluding, and he's saying that these two persons, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they're unable to control their senses. They're blinded by pride and opulence. They become attached to women. I shall relieve them of their false prestige. So Narada Muni's like, okay, I'm going to help them to become humble now. He says, these two men are by their good fortune, they're the sons of the great demigod Kuvara, but because of false prestige and madness after drinking liquor, they're so fallen that they're naked, but they cannot understand that they are. Therefore, because they are living like trees, because trees are naked, but also not conscious. So it says if they want to be naked and not even conscious of the fact that they're naked, then they're not fit to be human beings. Living entities who are naked and don't even know it, that's trees. So he said these two young men should receive the bodies of trees. That would be the proper punishment. Then he says, nonetheless, after they become trees and until they are released, by my mercy, they will have remembrance of their past sinful activities. So while they're standing there as trees, and they stand there for a very long time, they're going to be aware of why they got the body of trees, what it was, what the cause was. So they'll get a lot of time to reflect and introspect on their situation in life. He says, moreover, by my special favor, after the expiry of 100 years by the measurement of the demigods, they will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, face to face, and thus revive their real position as devotees. So 100 years of the demigods. One day of the demigods is equal to 6 months. So each year is 365 times 6 months, times 100. That's how long they had to stand as trees. So they were, if you think about like in Northern California, we have the giant sequoias and redwoods that are like, some of them over 1,000 years old. And they're just like infants compared to these two Yamala Arjuna trees in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj. And they've been there for many, many, many thousands of years. So then, having said that, Narada Muni just went back to his ashram, and Nalakuvara and Manigriva became trees. So that was it. Now, Krishna, he knows all this. So we've been talking over the last few days about how Krishna, when he performs his Vrindavan Leela, that he basically, he's the Brajavasis' consciousness and knowledge of Krishna's being the supreme absolute truth is covered by Yoga Maya. And by Krishna's own desire, he himself is also covered by Yoga Maya. So he's not even aware of his own powers. He's not aware of his being the Supreme Lord while he's having these pastimes. He's just acting like an ordinary child with full consciousness of being an ordinary child, sitting on the lap of his mother and doing all these mischievous things. So, but now in this pastime, because now he's not in the mood of being, he's still in the mood of being a playful baby, but his intention here is to deliver these two souls, deliver these two demigods. So then the Yoga Maya potency, at least on Krishna, eases up a little bit. So he's still acting as a baby, but in his mind, he's very intentional about what he's doing. He knows the whole story of these demigods' lives, what happened, how they got cursed, and he's going there to deliver them because that's what Narada Muni wanted. So that's what it says here in text 24. Supreme Personality of Godhead Sri Krishna, to fulfill the truthfulness of the words of the greatest devotee Narada, slowly went to that spot where the twin Arjuna trees were standing. So here's Krishna. He's tied up to this grinding mortar, and he's only about 2 years old, and he's just crawling along, dragging this heavy mortar behind him. And this is what he's thinking. He's thinking, although these two young men are the sons of the very rich Kuvara, and I have nothing to do with them, Devarshi Narada is my very dear and affectionate, and therefore because he wanted me to come face to face with him, I must so for their deliverance. So Krishna say they didn't ask anything because my devotee has blessed them. So we were talking yesterday. Krishna is means that he's subordinate to the will of his devotees. So whenever a pure devotee makes a statement about this is going to happen, Krishna is going to save you, then Krishna is like, oh, he writes that on his list of things to do. Okay, that's another thing I have to do. I have to deliver Nala Kuvar, these two Yamala Arjuna trees. So yeah, so Krishna, we can see from this pastime the importance of getting the mercy of a devotee, the importance of getting the blessings and the well wishes of devotees, because Krishna does what his devotees, his pure devotees want him to do. And that's why Rupa Goswami stresses so much to approach a bona fide spiritual master, to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Why? Because when the spiritual master becomes pleased with us, then he prays to Krishna to deliver us. The spiritual master says, Krishna, this poor soul is struggling in the material world for so many lifetimes, and they're really trying their hardest despite all the different obstacles and struggles to please me and please you, and they're helping me so much. Please deliver them. You have to deliver them. They are delivered, right? And so when they say that, then Krishna is like, okay, you got it. And then Krishna, he will start, really putting that devotee through some purification so that they can get delivered. And that's what happens here, that they're in that tree body for so long, they're just totally, and they're conscious. So, it's like they're suffering and they're conscious of their suffering situation for all those times. So that kind of agony and remorse that they must be feeling is purifying them and qualifying them for deliverance by Krishna too. So everybody's online today. So yeah, so thinking like this, Krishna's like, okay, and he just crawls in between the two Arjuna trees. The mortar, which is going lengthwise, gets stuck in between them. And then Krishna, he just gives a little tug, and there's like a thunderous sound, and these trees come crashing down. Yeah, so the huge thunderous crash. And then out of the trees come these two beautiful, effulgent demigods, Nalakuvara and Manigriva. It says here that the two great perfect personalities who appeared like fire personified came out of the two trees, the effulgence of their beauty illuminating all directions. With bowed heads, they offered obeisances to Krishna, and with hands folded, they spoke the following words. So here, now they're going to offer all these really amazing prayers. Let's check here. What I want to say. So one thing that's interesting here before we get into the Nalakuvara and Manigriva's prayers is that, Krishna is just a 2-year-old boy. So we know that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and for him, nothing is impossible. So for him to pull down these two trees, even though they're really enormous trees, is not surprising to us. But one thing that's really surprising is that, okay, Krishna is very strong, but how about the rope? If you think about it, it's just an ordinary rope that Yashoda brought, from the household, like a clothesline or a rope for tying up cows. And that rope also had to withstand all the force that Krishna was exerting on it to pull down the trees. So how is it that the rope didn't snap? Did anyone ever think of that? How is it that the rope didn't break? How is it that the mortar didn't just cave in? It's a hollow, like a barrel, basically, that they put the spices in and then they grind it. So how is it that it didn't just get crushed under the pressure? Is that Krishna's activities so extraordinary that only is Krishna limited But he also empowered the rope and the mortar and made them so strong that they wouldn't break when he pulled down the trees. So just an ordinary rope and an ordinary wooden grinding mortar, but they were able to withstand, like, God knows how much measurement of force. So in the same way, Krishna can empower us when we take a role in fulfilling his plan, because this rope and the mortar, they played very key roles in fulfilling the plan of the Lord. And thus, and because of that, they were empowered. They were, fortified with, just like, I was going to say superhuman strength, but super ropian strength, super duper rope. So that apply. We can meditate on that too, as far as we're concerned. We may be just like it was an ordinary rope. We're just ordinary people, but when we dedicate ourselves to serving the Lord, when we take part in the Lord's plan, when we play an important role in the Lord's plan, then Krishna can empower us. He can give us strength that would otherwise never be possible. And we see that Prabhupada did that. I mean, Krishna did that with Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada was an elderly man. He was 70 years old and he was flying all over the world. He was, doing so much, barely sleeping, and all these things. And just inconceivable for any human being to do what Prabhupada did. But because he was executing the Lord's plan, according to the Lord's, explicit desire that he received through his spiritual master, then he was empowered. So in the same way, we can be empowered to do amazing things in Krishna's service by Krishna. So, all right, let's see what these demigods are going to say now, because now they're in a very different mindset after all those years of standing as trees. And also not only that, but because all those years they were in the courtyard of, they were in the courtyard of Nanda Maharaj, at least for as long as Nanda Maharaj was living there. So they witnessed these very early childhood pastimes of Krishna. And from the time Krishna was born, Mother Yashoda would take him out in the courtyard to get some sunshine, to play there in the shade of those trees. So they're getting Krishna's darshan like almost every day, at least for the past couple of years since Krishna's appearance. So here now, they're very aware that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of God at this point, and they offer this nice prayer. They say, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogim. That's how it starts. And this particular line, as the first line of a verse, appears in a few different places throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, right? Like when Uttara, when Parikshit in the womb is being, threatened with the Brahmastra weapon, then she calls out, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogin. And also, I think Kunti Devi also says it at one point, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogin. So the idea is Mahayogin, that Krishna is the great master of all mystic powers. So whenever devotees are in distress, they address Krishna in this way, that Krishna, you're the master of all mystic powers. You're the most supremely powerful person in the universe. You can do absolutely anything. So definitely you can save me from my situation. So whenever we're in trouble, we can also call out, Krishna, Krishna, Mahayogin, save me. So that's what they say. They say, oh Lord Krishna, your opulent mysticism is inconceivable. You are the supreme original person, the cause of all causes, immediate and remote, and you are beyond this material creation. Learned Brahmanas know on the basis of the Vedic statement, Sarvam Kal Vidam Brahma, that you are everything, and that this cosmic manifestation in its gross and subtle aspects is your form. So, yeah. And it says here in the purport that Nalakuvar and Manigriva, they say that we should be delivered by the blessings of Narada was all your plan. So they understand that it wasn't just coming out, it wasn't just randomly that Narada went there, but that it was actually Krishna's plan. And even though Krishna says, previously that he had nothing to do with them, he actually had something to do with it. So yeah, they say that everything past, present, and future is known to you. Your plan was made so nicely that although we stayed here as twin Arjuna trees, You've come as a small boy to deliver us. It's 29, 10:29, 10:29. Yeah. So then, so Krishna, why is Krishna saying he doesn't have anything to do with him? Because he wants to give all the credit to Narada. It's only because of Narada. Otherwise, I wouldn't be bothering with you guys. But actually, Krishna inspired Narada to go there. And he actually admits that later on in text 40. He says, the great Saint Narada Muni is very merciful. By his curse, he showed the greatest favor to both of you, who were mad after material opulence and who had thus become blind. Although you fell from the higher planet Swargaloka and became trees, you were most favored by him. I knew of all these incidents from the very beginning. So Krishna is admitting, from the very beginning, I knew how you were, messing up your lives there, misusing your wealth, totally intoxicated on your own pride. And I knew how that Narada was going to walk by and do what he did and curse you. And this was all actually my arrangement to bless you. So I'm going to skip some of these prayers here. This is nice. I was talking about in previous classes, I was saying how, Krishna acts like a little baby, and then he looks like just exactly like an ordinary child. And then there'll be something that happens in the middle of the pastime, just to remind us that he's actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And often that comes in the form of prayers. So here we have these prayers, that are appearing in bodies like an ordinary fish, tortoise, boar. You exhibit activities impossible for such creatures to perform, extraordinary, incomparable, transcendental activities of unlimited power and strength. So all these, you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead who have now appeared with full potency for the benefit of all living entities within this material world. So they go on and on like that, just praising him as the Supreme this, the Supreme that, Supreme auspicious, the Supreme good. So just to remind us who this little naughty 2-year-old really is. It's our Lord. So let's see. Now there's a really nice, so then at the end of offering their prayers, they say to Krishna, we are always servants of your servants, especially of Narada Muni. So they're feeling so indebted to Narada Muni. I mean, Narada Muni basically just saved them from a hellish future. So they're really expressing their gratitude to him. Now give us permission to leave for our home. It is by the grace and mercy of Narada Muni that we have been able to see you face to face. And now this is a very beautiful prayer that you can learn if you want me to. Text 38. I'll say the Sanskrit. I think it's Brahma Samhita verse here. Vani gananu katane shavano katayam asto chakarma sumanastavapada yorna smrityam shirastavani vasa jagat praname drishti satam darshane stubhavatanunam. Translation. Henceforward, this is Nalakubara and Manigriva talking, so now you're going to really see their change in heart. So how are they, what is the way forward for them now? How are they going to live the rest of their lives? Henceforward, may all our words describe your pastimes. May our ears engage in oral reception of your glories. May our hands, legs, and other senses engage in actions pleasing to you. And may our minds always think of your lotus feet. May our heads offer our obeisances to everything within this world, because all things are also your different forms. And may our eyes see the forms of Vaishnavas who are non-different from you. So you can see how this is what they're asking for. Because whenever the Lord appears, the devotees always ask some benediction. The Lord wants to give some benediction. So this is the benediction that they're asking. That they'll always just be able to hear and talk about his pastimes, that they'll always be able to think of Krishna and offer obeisances to him and see devotees, associate with devotees, knowing that the devotees are the representatives of Krishna. So the Krishna was very pleased by these, and it says that he was smiling. He was bound by the wooden mortar, by the ropes of the gopis, and therefore, smiling wildly, he spoke to them the following words. So Prabhupada explains here in the purport that Krishna had just delivered them. So he freed them from being trees, and now they're just about to go back to, their own abode. And But Krishna's smiling because he's just laughing at himself. He's laughing at the irony of the situation, that here he just delivered them from their bondage, but the whole time he's still tied up to that wooden grinding mortar. He's still got his belly. The rope is still around his belly, and he can't get it off. He can get them out of these humongous, massive trees, but he cannot get himself out of that rope. So how is that? Because the type of bondage was different. The Nalakuvara and Manigriva's bondage was due to material ignorance, and that he can very easily smash. Krishna can smash through all the modes of nature, all the misconceptions, all the anarthas and all these things. That's a breeze for him. But he can't defeat. He can't defeat the devotee's love. So because he's bound by the ropes of Yashoda's love, that's a kind of bondage that he can't break. He's just stuck there. So that's what Prabhupada's saying. That Krishna is saying, these two young demigods fell from higher planetary systems to this planet, and I have delivered them from the bondage of standing for a long time as trees. But as for me, I am bound by the ropes of the gopis, and I am subject to their chastisements. So I freed him from the curse of Nara, I freed him, but I can't get free from my own trouble here. Yeah. And then he says that Krishna submits to being chastised and bound by the gopis because of pure love and affection, worthy of being praised by a devotee in so many ways. So that's the thing. Yeah, Krishna he's glorifying the association of devotees. He says that when one is face to face with the sun, there is no longer darkness for one's eyes. Similarly, when one is face to face with a sadhu, a devotee, who is fully determined and surrendered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one will no longer be subject to material bondage. Krishna himself is glorifying his devotees. And then he tells them that you can go home, and because you have this pure desire to be always absorbed in my service, your desire to develop love and affection for me will be fulfilled, and you will never fall from that platform. So that's what we hear about in the Damodarastika, that that just as Nalakuvara and Manigriva were cursed to stand as trees, but you gave them prema bhakti. Tata prema bhakti swakam me prayacha amokshigaho me stikamodare. Yeah, so just as you gave them, you delivered them and you gave them love for you. So please give me your pure prema bhakti. I have no desire for any other kind of liberation. All I want is pure transcendental loving service for you. All right, so then after all of that, Nalakuvara and Manigriva, they circumambulate the Lord, who's still tied to the mortar, and they circumambulate him and the mortar, and they offer their obeisances to him, and then with his permission, they return to their respective homes. They couldn't, nobody, I mean, if he couldn't even get it off, what are they gonna do? All right, so we're getting a little overtime. We have a short session today because we have Taco Tuesday soon, but Evan's got his hand up. Yes, Evan, please tell us what's on your mind.
This is really sweet. We kind of just glaze over this pastime the way that I've heard it. So, this part of the pastime. So it was really nice to hear like all the prayers and, in depth. I was initially thinking like this punishment seems unusually cruel, especially compared to Putana. Like, that's what I was thinking. But then hearing more, I was just thinking, I guess this is exactly, Krishna knows exactly what we need to become pure. And, for Putana, then it was maybe easier or whatever. She just got whatever she needed. And then also, this is actually a huge privilege to have to be a tree in Vrindavan, because they can always behold Vaishnavas and the transcendental Dham, and it initially seemed really cruel, but then I was like, no, actually that's way better than any birth that we can ask for. And then I also wanted to comment that when I did have that initial like doubt, like, oh, that's super cruel. Like, how can Narada Muni do that? It might be like a little bit bewildering and confusing, but as soon as you hear that, Krishna is bound by love, like everything just, it doesn't matter. Like you just know, you have faith that Krishna is so sweet and perfect, and the pastimes are transcendental and absolutely tailored to what needs to happen.
Yeah. And even when Narada Muni cursed them, I mean, it wasn't really a curse, it was a blessing, because they were living there in the heavenly planets. If he hadn't have intervened, they would have gone on enjoying, a very long lifetime there in the heavenly planets. But this way, very quickly they got the darshan of the Lord, and they got Krishna prema. They were blessed with pure love. So a devotee's so-called curse is never actually a curse, it's always a blessing. And that was the move. It's not, he wasn't angry with them. He was compassionate. When he saw them like that, he thought, oh, these guys, they're demigods. They have such a good opportunity. It's kind of like, somebody, they're born in a devotee family, and then they just, become like a rascal. It's like, you're just like, they had such a good chance, and you really want to try to help them. You want to try to, somehow pick them up out of their rascaldom and bring them back to their senses. So that's exactly what the situation was here. They were born, and they just took advantage of their prestigious position to, do a bunch of nonsense. So Narada Muni was compassionate. He's like, okay, they're diseased. They're like this guy. They're just illusioned, and I need to wake them up. I need to do something that's going to wake them up and cure them of this insanity that's ruining their lives. And that's what he did. Because at least as trees, I mean, they were just standing there. They couldn't do anything. They were just kind of in a neutral state where they had a long time to just think things over, which is what they did. And that's why when Krishna did finally, they were ready. When the time was right, when their consciousness was right, and Krishna's like, okay, now's the time. Rosa.
Thank you. I was just thinking about the principle, like through the devotees of Krishna Master, like them praying for any, like I was just thinking like how they are praying for like or like going back to Godhead, and Krishna is like seeing that, but doesn't also like don't they also kind of pray that for everybody, like when they're going for like preaching around the world, or they definitely see so many people, and not everybody is like needed to go to them, or the person. So they were like turned to Arjuna trees, and they definitely want to be really good. Like,
yeah.
I mean, it was Krishna Lila, like originally they were playing this role, kind of, but maybe confused what's their position, but maybe they have special position, or they just got some special mercy, or like,
yeah. I mean, definitely they had a pious background. So they're born in the sons of Kuvara, so they had a pious background, and they got the mercy of Narada Muni. Narada Muni just wanted to give them the mercy, and they got it. So yeah, but it's true. Devotees like the spiritual master, it's pure senior devotees. Any devotees, when they go out in Harinam, when they go out in book distribution, they want everyone to be delivered. But it's different when somebody's actually trying to be delivered. It's like, let's say your spiritual master goes out on Harinam, sees all these people and nightclubs and bars and stuff, and it's like there's a desire, Krishna, please, deliver these people. But then it's different when the spiritual master is dealing with their disciples who are actually like trying really hard, to chant attentively and to try to please them. It's a different flavor, it's more of an intense, focused prayer, personal prayer. Yeah, although like in Harinam, it's like, Krishna, just please help these poor souls. Just see how they're just ignorant fools here suffering in the material world. But when there's a devotee who's, surrendering and doing everything they can to advance in bhakti and get closer to Krishna, then it's like another thing. Yeah. All right. Okay, we better wrap it up because I got to set up here for Taco Tuesday. So thanks everybody for attending, and we'll see you tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Gaura Premanandi.
Hey, hey, Bo.